Welcome to another episode of The Brand Behavior, the podcast where we dive into the latest trends, insights, and hacks into the world of marketing. I'm your host, Zontee Delane, and today we'll be exploring the fascinating world of consumer psychology. So what makes people buy? What triggers their decisions? Well, joining us here are two expert guests who will help us decode the science behind consumer decision making. So stay tuned for an insightful discussion that will give you actionable takeaways to apply in your marketing strategies. And we have our guest, Zontee Ho, who's the managing director at Convince and Convert and president of Media Valory. Zontee is an expert in data-driven personalization and integrated marketing strategies. Hey, Zontee, how are you?
Hey, great to be here, Zontee.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on the show. And I've been really looking forward to working with you again. We've had an opportunity to work with each other through, speaking engagements on stage, various conferences, and so on. So it's always good to have you on the podcast.
Super happy to be here.
Jessica. Yeah, Jessica Couch,
I cannot
how are you?
complain.
Awesome. And Jessica is a marketing strategist specializing in fashion technology and digital retail. Jessica is known for innovative solutions that bridge fashion and technology. So with you two on the board right now, we should have a great conversation, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. All right. You guys ready to dive in? Okay, let's do it. All right. So recent studies have highlighted that there's an increasing importance in understanding consumer behavior and psychology in marketing. So with neuromarketing and data analytics, brands are now able to craft more personalized and effective marketing strategies that tap into the subconscious triggers of their audience. So I want to talk about the psychological triggers in marketing campaigns. And Jessica, I know fashion is definitely your world, right? And when we think about fashion brands and how they specifically leverage these psychological triggers to influence consumer behaviors, can you share some examples of what those psychological triggers that fashion brands may use? And this could be either through their advertisements, through how they design their clothes, things like that.
So what comes to mind for me is, let's just think about the luxury industry, which is a very unique industry because it plays on so many different emotions that people can have. But the main emotion that comes to mind is your worthiness. And I think that since everyone can define their worthiness differently, but they do understand that it's in comparison to some type of factor in which other people need to validate, the luxury industry has done a great job getting people to buy their products and associate that with the level of worthiness in themselves. So having a certain bag or wearing a certain bracelet or being able to say that, you have a certain jacket, it creates a worthiness, and it also connects you to a community. And so a lot of people kind of frown upon conspicuous consumption, for instance. So if you're in a lower socioeconomic, group and you're dressing up, it's always seemed to be like a negative, but it's playing on people's desire to not only be worthy, but a part of a community. And so I think because fashion is something that you wear on the outside of your body, and they're items that you show to other people, and people can validate your status or validate what they assume your taste is, or what background that you come from. It gets played on a lot in the luxury sector. But this is a big thing in fashion in general because there's so many hedonic motivations for purchasing things, and it all has to do with how you feel, how worthy you are, and how you associate these brands in the aspect of your own worthiness.
Yeah, and it's so funny because this reminds me of Deion Sanders and the phrase that he coined, like if you look good, you feel good. If you feel good, you play good. If you play good, they pay good, right? And so this is certainly connected to the social identity play that fashion brands have on consumers. Because ultimately what we wear is going to make us feel a certain way. And when we feel that certain way, we feel also that we are perceived in a certain light as well, in terms of when statement pieces, right, for fashion. And so what's interesting here is the aspect of how we can use data in order to determine what type of triggers these fashion brands or any other brand could use in order to focus on connecting with or engaging with their target audience. So Zontee, how can brands use data to help with their marketing campaigns that are connected to some type of psychological trigger.
Because I think that, to your point, consumer thing that brands are recognizing more and more is the underlying reason that we buy just for the purpose of having something. We buy because there are these motivations. If we can better identify those motivations, then we can actually target our marketing and even or customize our marketing based on those specific triggers. Now, there's a couple of ways that we can do this, right? If you own that data, right, we at Convince and Convert have worked with clients to actually do attitudinal research, where we go out and we field surveys and we analyze what are the different attitudes that people have within a particular audience, and then we segment them by the different things that drive them. You can start to use that as a place where we can actually ask customers questions about what they care about, right? So I'm going to go to a completely different industry, way away from fashion, which is higher education, right? So one of our clients is one of the biggest alumni associates in the US. And we did this attitudinal research with them, and we went out there and we found out that they had some people connected to the school because of their own prestige, right? They wanted to demonstrate that they were part of a really great community of people. There were others who were there for their need for camaraderie. They were there, more for the sports, more for the activities. They were really there about having connect people who enjoy things as they did. And the third group, they were more there for personal connection. Let's say, right, they were really there to build connections that could help them in their career or in their lives, in their philanthropy, et cetera, to build the right connection, actually serving them in that, right? They had different attitudes. That's the kind of information that you can go out there and then ask your customers, okay, which one are you? And then show them more content that's specific to those kinds of attitudes, right? Because then you're more highly relevant to them. But that's not to say that if you don't own that data, you can't take advantage of that data, because now there are a lot of technology companies who are putting a data layer using third-party data onto your website or landing pages or email, where they can actually define from the behaviors of these people on other websites. So to Jessica's point about the luxury space, you could have an e-commerce company within fashion actually tailor their messaging on their website based on motivations of people in how they've behaved on other sites. So I could go to buy jeans, and maybe I'm there for build evidence. And so the messaging that they're going to show me is going to be really different from the messaging that somebody else gets who's really driven by a good value, is going to be really different from the messaging that somebody is going to see if they're really driven by the latest fashion trends and being, novelty, right? And that is really powerful for brands, because it means that the experience of each individual person can be highly relevant to them. And in an age when we all have less time than ever before and more messages coming at us than ever before, I think that this is really powerful technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And data is key. And I think this applies, this data research, when it comes to the understanding the attitudes of consumers, certainly apply across the board for all industries, whether it's fashion, higher education, and even motion pictures, right? Because I know we've worked with clients at Digital Delane where it was a higher education client for professional development, and we focused on the data, the chatter within social media, questions people were asking, trends within specific markets, to try to come up with curriculum that's relevant to their specific need. Also, when focusing on motion pictures, to try to understand what pieces of content are going to resonate well with target audiences, right? So this research that these industries are doing is certainly important and is going to help shape their marketing messages as well as their offerings, right? And so going back to fashion, when we think about, well, what is the latest trend? I mean, how do these brands determine what the latest trends are? Is it just someone that has that knowledge and is just connected, or are they using some data to help figure out what the new season or line is going to be for fashion?
Yeah,
What are your thoughts,
so
Jessica?
fashion has a ton of ways to figure out what the trends are. There's a lot of companies like Edit It, and what they do is they collect data across the board to figure out what colors are trending, what fabrics are being bought the most. But sometimes the problem is with fashion is lagging. Because we're in a consumer-centric economy, that means like consumers are determining all the trends now. So in the past, fashion was more centralized to you had these houses that produce high-end quality goods and services for a very small group of people. That's how fashion came about. As fashion became more global and as it became available to the common person, we saw that the influence of who sets the trend left kind of like these houses and these designers, and it went into Hollywood, or it went into movie stars. It went into the people actually wearing it. And then, you had to watch TV, you had to read magazines, you kind of had to be in the know and wait for the tabloids to come out to determine, like, okay, what's the trend? Now we have social media where years ago, instead of having like celebrities, the bloggers were the ones sitting on the runway because the bloggers were now determining the trend because of the audience that they had access to. And so when it went to the bloggers, which became more of a common peer person, so you weren't necessarily a celebrity, you became a celebrity after a while, then we saw the trend go all the way down to people. So what people are doing right now, we're in this like micro trend era in fashion, which it could be good or bad because people are biters. So whatever they're saying, they're just going after. And there's these few kind of shepherds of industry that are leading the trends of like, okay, we dress like we're in the 2000s, we dress like we're in the 90s. So you're seeing style pop up in categories, and these style leaders are kind of now the influencers of their own, showing people what to wear. So what fashion brands have to do now that's kind of most interesting is you're not only paying attention to your supply chain and what's available and what fabrics are out, but now you have to keep your ear to the streets of like, what are these trendsetters really doing? How long is this trend going to last, and how do we catch up? Now, on the downside of that, we have Shein, and we have these fast fashion companies that are trying to give you every single trend. So they're casting this wide net to say, okay, we see this trend, we see this on the runway, because they're trying to actually figure out like what's going to last. Now, some of the technology that they've implemented is they are understanding how people are engaging in e-commerce. So to Zontee's point, if someone is looking at a picture for a certain amount of time and that's quantified over X amount of people, it triggers their system to say, this might be something we need to create. Let's push it out and let's test the market. Now, having a robust supply chain like that for some fashion brands, it's not really as feasible as it is for fast fashion. So fast fashion is kind of on top of the trend better than some of the other fashion brands who have to stay true to their core customer. And it's all about just how long it takes to produce those items. So we're really in this odd shakeup time in fashion about discovering where the trends are happening and then actually knowing, is this a micro trend? Is this a long-term trend? Is this something that we should create and produce? So it's a lot of catch up right now when it comes to trends and analyzing data that's available. And of course, on your website, you can track how long somebody's looking at something. But the problem is, just like on your Instagram feed, just because I looked at something does not mean I liked it. Just like I send memes all day of things I don't like to my sister. And now my Instagram is totally messed up because it thinks I was into these things. And I'm like, I'm not into it. I just thought it was funny. In the same way, being able to identify if a person is engaging with that, like a item, we don't know their actual motivation for doing so. We don't know if they're intrigued by the model. We don't know if they're looking at the color. We don't know if they're reading for a long time. So it's a lot of hit or miss in fashion, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Jessica, it's interesting that you bring up the point about the feedback, right? That you might be looking at something, but that you actually like that content. Now, some sites, including some of the platforms, are now a little bit better about at least asking you the question of, did you like this? Do you want to see more of this? Do you want to see less of that? And that's something that I think that we all have to take really seriously across industries is how do we build into our process of collecting data the ability for our customers to tell us, is this what they actually wanted or not, right? It's not a one-way conversation. Data is an iterative process, and the more we can engage them in that collection where, maybe there should be more fashion websites that say, what do you like about this? What don't you like about this? What are the things that you want to see more of? What are the things you want to see less of? And asking those questions on an ongoing basis would actually tell us a lot.
Absolutely.
The other thing interesting that you were talking about is the whole idea of micro trends, because the truth is this is across industries that the trends are becoming faster and the number of people within a trend is becoming smaller, right? We used to have big trends and sometimes you would have a little counter trend against it. And now when you look at the popularity of any given thing, it's just not as it was. For instance, I'll just point at toddler. So I've been thinking about this in the last couple of years, but we were talking about naming trends, right? And, when I was a kid, there were a lot of Jessicas. Jessica was a huge trend during that time period. And now we just don't see any single name get as popular. Even the quote popular names are not nearly as popular. And it's because we're kind of in these very fast cycles. So things come in and out in any industry faster than ever. And I think to your point, it means that we all have to pay attention, and social listening and voice of customer is more important than ever before, to actually pay attention to what your audience is talking about, caring about, discussing, asking questions about, and really proactively listening to that stuff consistently.
But this is why, like, I feel like consumer generated data content is so important, because with fashion, one of the key things that we need to know that we often don't have information from is exactly what's in your closet already. What size is it? How often are you wearing it? Those key pieces of information that are missing could determine how brands actually kind of create more efficient supply chains of what they produce. We're not asking that, and we don't have a way to mine that. Now, obviously, we could go to the credit card companies and be like, we want her information, but that could be a data violation. So figuring out ways where you want the consumer to feel good about sharing their data, because we just left an era where it was like data was a bad word, where it's like, oh my God, people have my data, it's a data breach and all this. And it's like, it's out there now. So like, now it's like, we have to find a way to engage the customer to making it normal and regular to share what you have as it relates to the information that we need on our side to give you a more personalized experience that drives conversions and not just has you engage a little bit and then you leave us.
About that, because you bring up a great question that I actually tackle in my book, which is, how do companies get customers to share that kind of data with them? And one of the things that I talk about is that you have an opportunity to build not only community around it, but also build utility around it, right? If you said to me, we've built an app, a fashion app, where if you put in the things that you own, the silhouettes, the colors, whatever, we will give you recommendations of how you could pair these things, how could you style them, what are you missing in your wardrobe, and help me better shop for the rest of my wardrobe, then I might be interested in sharing that data with you, right? Because there's utility. And then the other piece of that is, what if that is then helping other people like me rate my wardrobe, help me pick out outfits, share feedback on the things that I like, help me maybe raise my platform as an influencer. There's opportunities to look at both the desire for community and also that utility to really do a lot. The example that I took is about Sephora. That Sephora has been really successful with their app in integrating their data from in-store and online, because most of us, we've been shopping for makeup at some point. Zontee maybe a little bit less than the rest of us, but sometimes you go into the store and you're like, what exactly is the formula of that color that I really loved? Because I want to know which one that is so I can buy something complimentary, or I want to buy the same one again, or can't remember the exact formulation of my moisturizer or my conditioner or whatever, right? You want to know that. And by having an app that provides that information and makes it easy for you to track that information, Sephora gets you to engage with them not only in store, but online. They noticed that because they were doing cultural anthropology. They saw in their stores that people would pull out their phones or their notebooks and look up the thing that is the product that they like. And they were like, why don't we build something that actually helps you solve for that? Nike is in a lot of that sort of thing, right? Their Sneakerheads app is helping people collect. Their Run apps are helping you to get more out of their sports equipment and your sneakers, and you can actually input into there exactly which model shoes you have. I mean, that makes a difference when you provide utility to your customers. They will share data if it helps them live better.
I think you're absolutely right. I'm sorry, Tyler. I know we're just like yapping, but I wanted to say that providing that utility is key when it's done in a way that mimics consumer behavior. So having been in the fashion tech side for a long time, people created, a lot of solutions that they thought provided a utility, but when it's not in tune with actual behavior, because you haven't observed what are the behaviors that get people to convert in a physical setting, and then how do we create an omni-channel experience from that? I feel like that when you don't do that, it fails. I think Sephora did a great job, like you said, of studying their customer and saying, what are you doing to make your decision? And then how do we use technology to then accommodate those natural behaviors? When we're using technology to create new behaviors that people are not used to, like, hey, go in your closet and take a picture of your stuff, that's when we see that there's not a ton of adoption to some of these tools that would be necessary. And then we have to think for that customer, okay, so if you're not going in your closet regularly to take a picture, are we mining from your social media? Are we getting it? Can you allow us to see your credit card purchases? Are we just like uploading receipts? And there's so many ways we have to go backwards to figure out, especially with fashion, because if it's not sexy, people don't care how good it is for them. They're just not going to do it. And so we're building a peer-to-peer engagement platform, but it's because we spent 10,000 hours in fitting rooms. We've studied people and try to figure out, like, when you're thinking about buying, what are your behaviors and what are the behaviors you want to take with you into the store? And then how do we put it onto your phone to make it easy? So yes, to your point, it's like there's so many opportunities to create these bridges between the customer, products, and technology in a way that is functional.
Yeah, but what about, just kind of taking a contrarian view here, what about when we think about consumer behavior and how people may want to have brands utilize their data to have or produce more personalized experiences, products, offerings, and so on. But when you think about all the data breaches that have taken place recently, it starts to have consumers second guess the amount of data that they're actually giving to organizations. So how do you think, how can organizations balance between, maintaining consumer privacy and collecting data and also using that data to personalize their offering?
Yeah, this is actually a question that we asked when I was doing research for my book. And we went out there, we asked consumers, we asked a panel of American adults, do you prefer convenience? Do you prefer privacy? What's the trade-off between the two? And we found that 44% of people preferred more convenience, 31% preferred more privacy, and about 25% were 50-50, where they were like, they would want a balance of personalization and privacy, right? And I think that what that shows is that there is an understanding that there is a trade-off between the two, but people do want more relevant, more specific information that is to do with them and their lives. And PwC just released a report earlier this year, sometime in, I think, around May or June, that showed that about 50% of people were like very comfortable with the idea of sharing data in order to get that personalization. So I think that we're at a time when people understand that a certain amount of information is going to have to be given if they want that kind of highly relevant information back. And to Jessica's earlier, if you deliver it in a way that really improves their lives and helps them to get more out of it, they're going to understand the value of that. The thing, I think, is the transparency and building trust so that they believe that your brand is actually going to protect their data and also use it in an appropriate way. One of the examples I share in the book is brands like and Levi's actually go out and ask their customers, hey, do you want to opt out of Mother's Day communications? Because they know that for some people, that's a sensitive time of year, and getting bombarded with marketing messages can make those people feel really depressed during that time of year. And they don't want that. They don't want to damage their relationship with those people. So they're actually thinking about, how do we use our data in a transparent way to actually help alleviate some of these triggers for people out in their lives. And I think that if you build that kind of relationship with your customers where you're saying, like, we're going to steward and we're going to think about how to use this in a way that is beneficial to you without hurting you, and you make that part of your value proposition, then I think that you can actually use it as a way to build trust between your brand and your customers. Lemonade Insurance is another really good example of that, where they've been really transparent and human with their communications around their trust and privacy, as well as their utilization. And by just being really specific of, this is what we do, this is what we don't do, this is what we promise you, this is what we're never going to change, then people feel more comfortable sharing that data with them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So now I want to pivot to talk about behavioral economics and marketing strategies, right? Because when we think about why consumers buy things, there's certain behaviors that we have to factor in when they're making that purchase decision. So some of these behavioral economics tactics include social proof, right? Like, people are more likely to buy a product or service if others are also doing so. Social proof and framing and loss aversion could be applied to the various marketing tactics and even developing pricing, right? I want to pivot to neuromarketing tactics. And so for those who may not know what neuromarketing is essentially it's it helps us to understand how the brain works and the stimulus that could be implemented to create some type of reaction. And an experience that I recently had is visiting my mother, and she was using Jergens lotion, right? And Jergens lotion has this smell to it. And then as soon as she put it on, I immediately just like zapped back into my childhood, right? And it was from a place of comfort. And so I feel like if I were walking down the aisle and trying, the smelling lotions, that smell itself would automatically connect me to that brand and provide a feeling of comfort. And so, I look at that. I look at, Tide as well. She's used Tide for years, and I just automatically connect that brand with anytime I'm trying to buy laundry detergent, right? So these are neuromarketing tactics, I think, that are stimulating my brain, that connects me with a product, and thus then have me purchase that product. But Zontee, what are some neuromarketing tactics used in today's campaigns? And if you can provide some examples, that'll be great.
One of the things that you're talking is how high arousal experience for us. Arousal meaning a state of sensoriness. And is that we often joke about how when you go to an open house, looking at an apartment, you're looking at a house, they have cookies, something like that, so that it smells delicious the second you come in the door, right? It's the reason that, when you walk into a high-end hotel, they've pumped a certain scent into the lobby. The idea is that smell actually activates parts of our brain, not only in terms of memory, but just in terms of experience, right? Talking about this idea of neuromarketing, it's really how do we activate this high arousal state in a person they're making those purchase behaviors. So it's one of the reasons that I think actually right now you're seeing a lot more brand activations where somebody walks into the space. Space is incredible. It's beautiful. It makes you want to Instagram in it. It makes you want to touch things. It makes you want to look at things. They're trying to see this state in which your brain goes, ooh, this is so fun. I'm having an incredible time. I need to take home a list of this, right? Because the more we feel relaxed, the more we feel happy, the more we feel stimulated, the more likely it is that our barriers to our normals are lowered, right? And so from that in-person experience, again, it's why you're seeing more experiential marketing than ever before, because customers have a very high skepticism. So what can we do down? We can activate those different sensory stimuli. And then you're seeing it again in the online space, that more brands trying to find ways to emulate some of that, right? How can they make you feel really good in your online experience so that you're more likely to buy? Now, one of the examples that might not necessarily come to mind for people, but I think is a really great one, is the use of creators and people who really code groom and the language of the audience in creating advertising content, right? We've all seen those ads on YouTube or Instagram or whatever, where for a second you think you're just watching another video from a content creator that you like, and you agree with what they're saying, and you feel good, and you're nodding along, and then you kind of realize like you've been taken in. It's an ad. It's an ad for some product, but it has the same ability of stimulating parts of your brain that make you go, I'm having a good time, and I totally agree with this person, right? And I think that that's really the state that they're trying to get you into when they're using like that.
Yeah. Field grooming is huge
Absolutely.
in like beauty and fashion right now, because putting anything on a peer, that's why peer-to-peer is going to be one of the main ways that we're driving sales in social commerce. Is like going to be a huge billion-dollar industry, because if you feel more comfortable and you self-identify with a person who you deem as similar, those feelings come naturally when they're giving. It's trust. I guess that feeling is just trust. You trust that whatever product that they're selling to you, if they have similar hair, you're going to trust whatever they say about it. And then there's also the effect of like, the aspirational effect in fashion. Like when you put something on someone's body like Kim K, it doesn't matter if your body's not like Kim K. You're going to believe that whatever she's wearing, when you wear it, you get that same effect. And so it's such an interesting phenomenon when people buy these products so that they can look and have this hourglass figure. And even if they don't have the hourglass figure, having these products on helps them to feel as if they're getting the same effect as having said figure. and they're able to emulate the sexiness of the person that they saw, and they feel good in it. Oh, it doesn't matter how we think they look. That's not our job. It's how they feel. And so when they identify, they get those feelings. So that happens a lot in fashion and beauty. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, it sells.
Yep. Absolutely. I mean, especially when it comes to social media and fashion and beauty, I feel like everywhere that I go, whether it's in store, at a department store, on vacation, at a restaurant, there's one thing that's in common, and that is they always have a space or place for social media pictures, right? You have new activations that take place at a restaurant. They'll have a kind of like a grass wall, right, with some type of neon so that people can take pictures. Or if you're on vacation at a popular destination, they'll have some places set up where it's, like the city name and these big block letters where people can take pictures, even at the airport, right? When you go into the airport, there's places where people can take pictures. And I think that this is a newer form of neuromarketing because it's almost two-sided with residual benefit, meaning that people get this experience that, oh, they can actually take pictures and share it on social media. And their following would be able to connect that experience with seeing that person that they either idolize or want to emulate or wish they could be there, right? And so it's a win-win across the board, which really amplifies the organic reach of that engagement, right? So I think when we look at the traditional sense of neuromarketing and the sort of new tactics revolving around social media engagements, and in particular Instagram, we have to factor that, right? So if there were a new brand that's trying to determine, well, how can I leverage neuromarketing tactics in this product release or this event that I'm producing? Certainly the first thing that I would say is, hey, make sure that you have an Instagram wall, right? Or have some type of activation so that people can share on social media. But where do you think that comes in the fashion industry and in new stores that are being created or launched, or even online, right, through e-com stores? How can they connect that neuromarketing tactic with their website or storefront?
Yeah, I think like if we're limited to the visual side, you got to find the shepherds of the industry. You got to find the people that people want to be like. They want to be their friends. They trust them. They believe them. And you got to put them in your product. And then that will sell your product to the group of people that trust them. And so I call them shepherds of the industry because I do believe like you're trying to go after a larger demographic. You want to go after the shepherds because the shepherds control their sheep instead of trying to rally up each sheep by itself. And so these shepherds just depend on the type of product. If you have a sexy dress, you got to know who to put in that sexy dress so that people trust that that sexy dress is going to give me what I need in the same way it gives that person. If you're trying to sell a pattern beauty hair product, you got to get a person who reflects what that particular product, what the problem is that it's solving. Like, if they have similar hair, then get somebody like that and then get them to speak to your products, because peer-to-peer right now, again, is a big deal, but people trust peers who seemingly are more similar to them and not just some wild influencer by themselves that they cannot relate to. So it's about relatability. It's about trust. It's about kind of conveying quickly visually that this person and you are similar, therefore you can trust them and you can trust their opinion, and that, they're not just like a walking paid ad. They're actually somebody who is credible and has built that credibility with their audience, because people can tell the difference. People can absolutely smell if
Yeah, but what about the cultural influences, right, on consumer behavior? Meaning if you're trying to find that shepherd of, what do you say, shepherd of industry?
Or of a trend.
Shepherd, the shepherd of industry, of a trend. But what if that shepherd is of a certain culture, right, that may not directly align with certain segments of an audience? How do you balance between finding that right person or shepherd that can either represent all or not?
I don't think we cast a wide net and do somebody that represents all. I think we diversify our shepherds and understand how we're going to segment our audience based on the cultures that our products speak to the most. And you get a shepherd from each one. I don't think you limit who you want those shepherds to be, because I think that, one, they exist in abundance. Everyone has at least probably 100 people that are tuned into them right now on social media. And if they say something, they might like it or tune in or whatever. So I don't think there's a limitation on it. I think your job is to constantly identify them, because also if you're selling products through content, for instance, you can't keep using the same person and the same content anyway. So there's also like a pressure to get more and new information that still resonates and that's in line with like your brand, what you're trying to sell, and the messages you're trying to convey.
Absolutely. And Zontee, what can how can marketers use cultural insights to create more effective campaigns, making sure that they're, on point, not insensitive, factoring in the current state of society and what's on the news and so on. I mean, how can they use these insights to make more effective campaigns?
Key things, I really agree with what Jessica was saying about not necessarily casting a wide net, but really showing diversity in the people who are actually representing our products, right? And part of how we can actually do that in an authentic way is to really listen for feedback from our most devoted users, right? The more that we as brands can proactively collect the feedback of the people who are our devoted fans, we can identify what are those trends that we need to be taking into consideration, what are those different cultural factors that we need to take into consideration, and what are the use cases that maybe we didn't even recognize originally that are actually really impactful from a storytelling perspective. I'll give you an example from, honestly, this might be 15 or 20 years ago, but when Febreze was first put on the market, one of the things out was that it was a really effective product. It like got rid of smells, but they were trying to market it to people who had smells, and those people didn't seem to want to buy it. And they were like, why is this happening? And they noticed that they had a small but devoted group of people who were using Febreze, and they were like, okay, like let's learn about those people. What are they actually doing out there? And what they found when they went and studied those people and asked them questions and went and observed them in their houses was these were neat freaks. What they wanted to use Febreze for was actually as almost a cherry on top of the cleaning cake as a final step. So they cleaned their space and then they were like, I want to make sure that it also doesn't smell. And they were using it then. And they realized at that point, if we pivot to that messaging and go from the people who are really into cleaning and then get them to kind of convert the next level of people who are sort of into cleaning and then work our way down until there's so many people who recognize our brand that the people who actually really need our product now finally care because they're paying attention to our brand, then we can win this market. And that's exactly what they went out and did. And I think that what they were able to recognize is that, again, this is not necessarily about always being brand led. Sometimes you have to be observing your customers and collecting those insights about them and being customer led, because they will know which communities are most relevant and who want to hear your messaging. And oftentimes that will give you an insight into a use case or a story that actually does resonate with people. So to Jessica's point about the fashion and beauty industries, we see that that's one of the reasons that these content influencers are really helpful in showcasing some of these stories and really elevating them to new heights, right? Because when someone sees someone like them or who they relate to tell that story about something that they actually experience in their lives, then they're paying attention.
Absolutely. All right. So now we're in a part of our podcast where we talk about tools that you cannot live without. And so I want to ask each one of you, provide me with a tool, could be an app or a tactic that you apply to your personal or professional lives. I'll go first. One tool or tactic that I use is actually time blocking. With a lot of the things that are on my plate, I just focus on time blocking to say, hey, this is going to be accomplished within 30 minutes or an hour. And I'm going to try to do everything that I can within that 30 minutes or hour to make sure that I complete that task, but I'm not doing anything else after that, right, on that task. So that's one of the tactics that I use. What are some things that you use in your personal or professional life, either app that you have on your phone that you can't do without, or a tactic?
I use is to help my projects and also organize my team on our shared projects. We use Kanban board. That's actually redundant, but it means boards already. Ban is boards in the Japanese, but in English we have Kanban boards. Anyway, the one that we happen to use is called Infinity. There are other products similar to it like Trello and many other software packages. But what I really like about it is that it's a nice visual presentation that allows you to drag and drop different columns and as yourself and move things around. And we find it helpful not only to map out projects, but it's even how I organized the chapters of my book and was able to move them around within the sections of the book as I was writing, and me to write more effectively and take
Wow.
better notes.
I have
Awesome.
two that I
How about you,
live by
Jessica?
right now. One, I do a ton of research and I need to always be like in the know in my industry. So like it's old school, but Google Alerts is like my best friend. I just like put in the topics that I want to learn about, and then every morning I can like put together my own newspaper basically and figure out like, okay, what are the things I care about? It's great for research and it's really good for staying on top of whatever thing in the industry you want to stay on top of. And then the second one, of course, is paid Chat GPT, because without it, oh my God, it gets me back like hours. I can do all sorts of analysis that maybe takes me too long to set up in like a Google Sheets. I can ask it to do like a multivariate analysis so much faster for something. And also, if you prompt it correctly, you can like do good research. Lately, I learned how to make a custom GPT. So I'll pour a bunch of like information that I'm researching in there, and then I can talk to it to pull out different information so I can quickly kind of create analysis or like rewrite something. So ChatGPT, the paid version, they don't pay me, but they don't have to.
All right, all right. And now we're going to turn to our next topic, which is bad, bold, or brilliant brands. Bad, bold, or brilliant brands. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present you guys with a couple of case studies, and I want you to know your opinion to see if this case study is bad, is it bold, or if it's brilliant. All right. So the first up is, you guys may have heard this from H&M. Jessica, you may know a little something about this, but the coolest monkey in the jungle hoodie. Right. So if you guys aren't familiar with this, H&M released an online ad featuring a black child wearing a hoodie with the text, "Coolest monkey in the jungle." It's obviously sparked outrage, as the term monkey is historically been used as a racial slur. Give me your thoughts. Is this bad, bold, or
Bold and
brilliant?
bad.
Bold and
Because
bad. Why?
one,
Why?
it's just a lack of understanding cultural nuances and like no research. It shows that perhaps there's no diversity in the decision making team for their marketing teams. And it's just kind of like no one stopped and said, hey, is there a sensitivity issue here that we should address before we put this out? So it was bold because, well, great to know that maybe they don't see color, so good. But it was also bad because it's like, you live in a bubble if you didn't know that that was not going to go over well. 2 thumbs down.
Yeah, what are your thoughts, Zontee? 2 thumbs down. That's it. That's what about your thoughts, Zontee?
I just think it was bad. It clearly indicated that they didn't have diversity in the room to review their content, and they didn't have good checks in place to check basic creative. This should have been easily by somebody in their group, and the fact that nobody noticed it, again, indicates that there's diversity in the room, or that they're not empowering people to speak up when they need to speak up.
Yeah. And next up is Zara's insensitive mannequin campaign. Zara released an ad featuring mannequins wrapped in sheets, which critics say resembled images from war zones. The ad was perceived as insensitive in light of the ongoing global conflicts. What are your thoughts? Is this bad, bold, or brilliant?
Bad, and it was bold because it was so insensitive to what's going on in the rest of the world. And I do get like fashion gets a huge, terrible reputation for being in its own little bubble of superficiality. And I thought that this was just so distasteful and so just not on par with being aware or reading the room, the global room at that, for a brand that's all over the world. So I would just say it was bad.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
have to agree.
yeah, it's the great. Yeah, you know what? Just contrarian view here. I think ultimately it could be more bold, because I don't know. I think there are having, women in sheets, that's a part of different cultures. So I feel like it could just be a representation of that. Granted, I do think I could see why there's an issue with it and how it can be considered insensitive. But I would say this is probably more bold than the blatant attempt that H&M just had with the
Yes,
coolest monkey in the jungle.
if
Right.
the
So that would be my
background
take on
wasn't
it.
rubble. I think if they just had women in sheets and it was like togas, which nobody's wearing, but that's fine. If the background didn't resemble like rubble and like sheetrock that was broken apart, I definitely would think it was more bold, but it was just kind of like, what are we doing here, Zara? We're in hypersensitivity time right now. So
That's
like, you really can't afford to get things wrong. People are
That's true.
extra sensitive.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And our last one is the Bud Light's Up for Whatever campaign. This happened back in the day, but what happened is Bud Light actually ran a campaign with bottles featuring the slogan, "The perfect beer for removing no from your vocabulary for the night." It was seen as promoting irresponsible behavior and even encouraging sexual misconduct. What is your thoughts on that? Is it bad? Is it bold? Or is it brilliant? I can see you.
Yikes. That's all I have to say about that. I mean, I think that it also demonstrates that in certain organizations, they might be hyper aware of one subculture, right? In this case, maybe a bro culture, et cetera, without recognizing the broader context in which it lives, right? And I think that, to Jessica's point, the thing is that we live in not only a hypersensitive world right now, but also one where we have to understand that everybody's coming from different experiences and cultural backgrounds. And it is not a message that's going to live inside the bubble of your core audience. It is a message that no matter what is going to be scrutinized by people across all sorts of different communities, and particularly for a brand like Bud Light that has a high visibility, you would think that they would want to be more aware. To me, the thing that we have to keep in mind with our brand equity is that it's easy to be knocked off of your pedestal, and then it is very difficult to pick up the pieces. If I were any of those brand managers, I would have really thought about, okay, is this something that's going to destroy my brand or be a really bad look before I send it out the door?
I also think it could have been brilliant because they know their customer. I don't drink Budweiser. I don't know anybody who drinks Budweiser. When I see people drinking it, I'm like, you would drink Budweiser. So it's also kind of like, in a sense, perhaps they wanted to let their demographic know that we made a beer just for you. And if it didn't tank their company and if they didn't see their sales drop, then perhaps it was brilliant for them because it turned off anyone else who was like, you know what, if I'm a more conscious drinker of beer, then I know for certain I'm not going to go with them. And that may have been great for them to say, we just want to cater to our audience.
Yeah, well, they did receive backlash on social media from customers calling the slogan tone deaf, right? So they removed all the bottles in circulation and issued an apology. So that was that, right? Well, listen, I enjoyed the conversation with you guys. Please let the audience know where they would be able to reach you or find you. I know, Zontee, you have a book that you're promoting and some upcoming webinars. Let us know where they can find you and how they can get in touch.
Sure, yeah. The book is Data-Driven Personalization. It is out right now in bookstores everywhere and online. You can learn more about me and my work at zonteho.com, and our team at Convince and Convert is convinceandconvert.com, and I have a companion podcast to the book called Data-Driven Decisions, which is available on our website.
Awesome. And Jessica, I know you have at Luxor and Finch Services, and you have some recent publications. Let us know what you have going on in your neck of the woods.
You can go to Luxor and Finch and find out more about our workshops and about the peer-to-peer shopping platform that I'm building. And you can follow me on social, I guess, at _Jessica Veronica _. And yeah, I would love to chat.
Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, Zontee Delane, founder of Digital Delane, a full-service digital marketing agency where we help to bring new brands, campaigns, and ideas to life. Thank you for tuning into this episode of The Brand Behavior. We hope you gained some valuable insights into the psychology of consumer behavior and, of course, how it influences our marketing strategies. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform and visit our website, thebrandbehavior.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and share it with your network. Until then, see you next time.